Midpoint and distance. So the midpoint of a segment is the middle point between two endpoints of the segment. So example 1, you're installing a curtain rod that is 108 inches in length. It comes with 3 brackets. So there's 2 brackets on the ends that are installed 4 inches out from the ends of the rod. The third bracket you want exactly in the middle between the outer brackets. How many inches away is this middle bracket from the outer brackets? So let's go ahead and think about this one. So here we have our curtain rod. You can see our outer brackets, and then we have our middle bracket, which is going to be our midpoint. So if we are installing the outer brackets, right, they are 4 inches away. So that means this 108-inch rod, right? So we have a rod that is 108 inches. Notice that we are going to go from the outer brackets, and how many inches away is that? So we need to go to find this segment here. How long is this segment? So just, let me draw a different color here. So actually right here. So just between the 2 outer brackets. What's the length of that? Because we know what the whole length of the rod is, but we don't need the whole length. So we have this key information of 4 inches and 4 inches. So we have a rod that's 108 inches. We go minus 4, minus 4. So why do we do that? Well, because we don't care about these 4 inches, so we can just get rid of it. So our rod is now going to be shortened. So we have 108 minus 4, which is 104. Minus another 4 is going to be 100 inches. Now, what we need to do is, if we're trying to figure out where the middle bracket's going to go, all we need to go ahead and do is divide by 2. So the middle bracket will be 100 divided by 2, which is equal to 50. And that's how we can find it. So 50 inches away from these 2 brackets is, right, if we go 50 inches on both sides, we get to the middle. Now, what if you went and took the rod, which is 108, and divided by 2? Well, that would be 54 inches, right? So this is the second way to find it. Now, if we know the middle point of the rod is 54 inches, but we want to know how far it is away from an outer bracket, well, we know that there's 4 inches on the one side of the bracket. So if we go from here, right, so here's our bracket. So if we know this whole length is 54 inches, but then we go ahead and subtract this 4 inches, so 54 minus 4, we know the distance between here just to this outer bracket, from the middle bracket to the outer bracket, is 50 inches. So there's 2 ways to solve for it. You could solve it either way, whatever makes sense. And there's probably other ways, so you can always share a different way how you did it. But let's go ahead and look at another example. Example 2, a welder needs to cut steel rod in half. If the length of the steel rod is 145 inches, what would be the midpoint? What inch? So what is kerf? Well, kerf is just the width of material that's removed by the cutting process. So like when you weld, you're going to remove a little bit of the material that's removed. So let's look at this. So the first part we're asking is, what would be the midpoint? So if we have a 145-inch steel rod, here's our rod, it's 145 inches. Well, if we're going to find the midpoint, which is somewhere, right, kind of around there. So how do we solve for the midpoint? Well, because we're just taking this rod and cutting it in half to find that length. So we're just going to go ahead and go 145 divided by 2. So 145, then divide by 2. 2 can go into not 1, but it can go into 14, right? 7 times. 2 times 7 is 14. We go ahead and subtract. Bring down the 5. Now 2 can go into 5. 2 times, because 2 times 2 is 4. We subtract, we get 1. So we're left with 72 and 1/2. So what's our midpoint? Our midpoint is 72 and a half, or you can say 0.5, right? Because this is the remainder, so we're just going to leave it as a fraction there. So now we need to answer the second question, which would be what would be the length of the two rods after the cut if the curve is disregarded. Well, each one is going to be, right, 72 and a half inches long, right? So each rod would then be 72 and a half inches. Now let's go ahead and look at the final example. Example 3. So B is going to be the midpoint. What are the segment AB, BC, and AC if AB is equal to 8x plus 12, and then the segment BC is 11x minus 6. So what do we know? Well, we know that the length, right? If we're saying we have a midpoint, which is RB, that means AB is going to be equal to BC in length, because they have to be equal, because what happens is to say a point in between these 2 points is to say that this is a midpoint, so it's halfway between both of them. So that means the lengths have to be equal. So what do we know then? If we need to solve for AB and BC, but we know, and AC, but what we know is this, and we know this to be true. So we know this, and then we know AB is equal to 8x plus 12, and then we know BC is going to be equal to 11x minus 6. So now let's go ahead and actually plug these in to what we know, which is just to be understood, which is our segment AB is equal to segment BC. So if we have 8x plus 12 instead of AB, and now this is going to be equal to 11x minus 6. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to get the x's onto one side, and then we need to get the numbers to the other side of the equal sign. So what I would do first is I would go ahead and subtract this 8x to then the right-hand side. So to get rid of it on the left-hand side, we just zero it out. So 8x minus 8x is going to be 0x. So this just gets rid of it. And I picked the 8x because it's the smaller number, so I want to move it over so then I get a positive x value. So on the right-hand side, I have 3x minus 6, and then on the left-hand side, I still have the 12. Now, what would be the next step? Well, we actually want to get rid of the 6 on the right-hand side. We want to get x all by itself. So let's go ahead and add 6 to both sides. So this just becomes 0. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So we get 3x, which is now equal to 18. Then in order to undo multiplication, which is what 3 times x is, or 3x is, we're just going to go ahead and divide by 3 on both sides. Because 3 divided by 3 just becomes 1. Now 18 divided by 3 is now 6. So what do we get? X is equal to 6, which is a great start. But this is not our answer, because what are we asking? We're asking what are the lengths for AB, BC, and AC. So we only just solved for X. So what do we need to do next? Well, we need to solve. We need to put X, as this number now 6, into our two segments of AB and BC. So let's go ahead and do that. So we find AB is equal to 8x plus 12, which then becomes, when we put x is equal to 6, we have 8 times 6 plus 12. Well, we always do multiplication before we do addition. So we go 8 times 6, which is equal to 48 plus 12. And 48 plus 12 is equal to 60. Now, what do we know? Well, we know that if the segment AB is going to be equal to BC, then we know BC has to be 60. We didn't even have to solve. We just should know that has to be equal, because they are, because B is the midpoint between A and C. But if we weren't quite sure, we can go back and just go ahead and do the multiplication. So let's go ahead and go 11 times the 6 minus 6. Well, 11 times 6 is equal to 66. If we go minus 6, that's equal to 60. So we were right. Right? AB has to equal BC because we have the midpoint. So what's AC? Well, AC is just going to be adding up our two segments, right? It's just AB plus BC. So AC then has to be 60 plus 60. So what does that equal? It equals 120. So we found all our lengths of the segments.